What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with camera tips and tricks for the Samsung Galaxy A17 5G. So stay tuned if you want to learn how to get the most out of all the various cameras here on your device. So this is the Samsung Galaxy A17 5G. Now, despite this phone being a budget option from Samsung, we're actually getting a lot of very impressive camera abilities here on the phone. Now, on the back of the phone, we're getting a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, and a 2 megapixel macro camera for close-up images. So it's definitely nice having that high megapixel count for the main camera, but then also getting the ultra wide so you can take in a lot of your surroundings. And then of course with that macro camera for objects that are very small, it certainly comes in handy for taking photos of that. And then for the front-facing camera, we do have a water drop notch up top, but in that notch is a 13 megapixel camera. Now the first thing I want to show you is a quick and easy way to get to the camera app on the device. All you have to do is simply double press on the power button, and then immediately the camera app pulls up here. And it doesn't matter where you are throughout the operating system, simply double press and it'll pull up the camera for your convenience. Then from there, if you do want to take a photo, simply tap on the volume button and it'll capture an image. And then same thing if you are in video mode. Now, despite the main camera on here being 50 megapixels, it doesn't actually capture 50 megapixel images by default. So you can see here, by default, at the top of the camera app, you'll see where it says 12M. So if you tap on that, it'll switch it over to 50M. And then now that it's been switched over to that, you'll actually capture 50 megapixel images. So the reason why that's not the default option is because 50 megapixel photos take up a lot more space on your device compared to 12 megapixels. And Samsung at least feels like most users don't always need that. Now, fortunately, it is there for you, so it is a nice feature to have in certain situations where it is necessary. So even from this example, I'm able to get a lot of detail zooming in on this plant here, and that is all thanks to the 50 megapixel camera. So if you're just going about things day to day, you probably don't need to be taking 50 megapixel photos, but certainly where it matters, it does make a difference. Now to switch over to the front-facing camera, there is the typical button right there, which I'm sure you'd expect that to do that functionality. But did you know that you can also just swipe down on the viewfinder and it will also switch the camera? And then swiping down again will switch it back to the rear camera. Now going back up top here, there are a couple other options. So this one of course is for the flash. So you can have no flash, flash on auto, or flash on at all times. You can also go right here to access various filters. So we have original, so the standard mode here. But then swiping over, there's tons of different other options. And what's cool too is that within these various filters, you can further adjust the color temperature, the contrast, saturation, and strength. So lots of different ways to customize the look of your images. You can even do grayscale as well. And this hidden feature is especially interesting. If you go to this download button, it'll actually take you over to the Galaxy Store where there's a bunch of additional filters available. So some are paid, but many of them are free. Now, if there is a certain filter that you use more often, you can actually hold down and then drag it over and then drop it. So that's really nice for rearranging things. Now, I personally prefer just to go with the original filter look, but if you do find yourself wanting a unique look for your images, then I would definitely recommend browsing some of those options in the Galaxy Store because those look especially promising compared to the default options. Now, within the main area of the camera app, you'll see these two options. There's two. So that does zoom in at 2x, but keep in mind that since there is no dedicated telephoto camera, this is simply just cropping in. But that is one of the nice things of having a 50 megapixel camera is that digital zoom does work a lot better. But you can also go to 4x or even 10x as well. But as you zoom in further, the quality will go down. Now there is this other option here, 0.5, and if you go there, it'll take you over to the ultra wide camera. And then with the ultra wide, you can fit a lot more content into a single frame. This is especially useful, I feel like, when you're traveling, maybe there's a large building you want to take a photo of, or maybe a tall tree, then the ultra wide camera can certainly come in handy. Now moving on here, we do have the bottom slider. So we'll start all the way on the left side here for fun mode. So fun mode is kind of interesting, not something I use that often to be honest, but you can apply certain filters, different effects, but I would recommend trying this out and kind of playing with it. There's me right there, so that's pretty funny, but definitely a lot of different effects in this fun mode, so if you want to have some fun with your phone, then there you go. Now there's also portrait mode down here, so with portrait mode, of course, you get those nice blurred out backgrounds. If you tap here, you can adjust the level of blur, so if you want less blur, you can do that, or even more blur, you have that option as well. Then heading over to video mode, we have a few options here. So up top here, there is an option to have the flash on basically at all times when you're taking a video, or you can have it on auto. Also up here, you can see where it says FHD 30, If you tap there, it will change the video resolution. So this phone does not support 4K video, so HD is just 720p, and then FHD is 1080p. Also got the More tab here, and there's a lot of other options here as well. So one of them is macro. So to get to the macro camera, you do have to access it through there. And then with the macro camera, as I mentioned, you can get very close up and have things be in really good detail. So certainly a nice option to have in certain situations if you want to take a photo of a small object. There's many more options here as well. So there's Pro mode, so you can adjust ISO, other things too like white balance. Definitely something to try out if you want to get a little bit more sophisticated. We have panorama, food mode, night mode. So in low light situations, use that. Macro, which I already showed you, slow motion and hyperlapse. If you find yourself using any of these in the More tab pretty often and you want it in the bottom slider, simply go to edit and then you can grab on and then drop it right in. Maybe you're not using fun mode or portrait mode very often, you can then move that into the More tab. We have another button right here in the corner, and over here there's a lot of other customizations. So we have another way to access the flash. There's also the timer, so you can do 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, or no timer. You can also adjust the aspect ratio of your images, so you can do 3:4, 9:16, or 16:9, which is great for video thumbnails, 1:1, which is square, or you can do full, which is the entire size of the phone's display. So lots of options when it comes to that, which is nice. You can also adjust the megapixel count down here as well, between 50 and 12. You can also go here to adjust the exposure. Also quick access to the filters as well. You can also add a beauty mode. So I personally don't like this mode because I feel like it looks really fake, but if you turn that on, it will kind of smooth out skin and make your photos look a little bit different. So that is an option, maybe something you might want to try. But then also over here, there's this gear icon, and over there, it'll take you over to more camera settings. So as you might know, you can scan QR codes by using the camera app. If that's something that annoys you, you can turn that off. We also have swipe shutter button. So right now, by default, if you swipe on the shutter button, it'll take a burst photo, or you can create a GIF or GIF. But let's try this right now. And you can see I took a bunch of photos there in a row. But going back here, I can create a GIF or GIF right now. And let's see what that looks like. And that is certainly a moving image. We also have the watermark. So if you prefer to have a watermark in your images, this kind of reminds me of the old school film cameras because you can add the date, you can put the time as well, which is pretty cool. You can have the model name of the phone. You can also edit that. Maybe you want to put your name instead of the name of the phone. So that might be kind of nice. And then you can even change the font and the alignment of that watermark. You can even put it up top as well if you prefer that instead. So a lot of different customizations. And I do feel like the watermark feature is actually kind of underrated. I wish this was something that we had on iPhones as well, but this is a cool feature, especially in times where you think you especially need it. Also under date, you can change the format of the date, which is nice as well. And then for the time, you can remove the AM PM. There's also an option for high efficiency pictures. Now, I would keep this off, especially considering that this phone actually comes with a lot of internal space at 128 gigabytes or higher. So I don't think you really need this, but you can technically save space with this mode. There's also save selfies as previewed. So save selfies and selfie videos as they appear in the preview without flipping them. There's also swipe up and down to switch cameras. I already showed you that to switch between the front and rear cameras. High efficiency video, kind of similar to the high efficiency photos. I would keep that off, honestly. There's also video stabilization. So this time around with the A17 5G, we do have optical image stabilization, also known as OIS. That's actually a new feature with this phone, so I would certainly keep that on. Now this phone does support HDR images, so you might notice sometimes on certain devices that at least support HDR, your images will be a bit brighter compared to photos that are not. So some people like that, some don't, but if you are looking to turn off HDR, that's where you do it right there. There's also composition guide, so we'll enable that. And then you can see we do have grid lines here, so the rule of thirds. Now we can also go back here and change it to just the level only or grid lines only, so that is nice as well that there is a level. Location tags, pretty common sense. Basically we'll add tags to your pictures and videos so you can see where they were taken. So I showed you that you can use the volume buttons to take a photo or record a video. You can also use the volume buttons to zoom in or out, or just use it for the volume of your phone. And you can see it is zooming in, and then volume down is zooming out, all the way out to the ultra wide camera. There's also floating shutter button, we'll enable that. And then I'll also show you show palm. So with the floating shutter button, you do have an additional shutter button right here. So it works just like the other one, but instead you can move it to wherever you want. So if you are left-handed, that might be convenient potentially. And then over here in the front-facing camera, we also have a wider field of view. So this is for group selfies. So you can see it moves it just slightly out. So that could be convenient for you. But I also want to show you the palm feature. So if I hold up my palm, it now took the selfie. And this feature is actually a lot more useful than you might even think. And then we also have settings to keep. So if you don't want the phone to keep going back to the default settings, and you want some of these settings to stay instead, like filters, or you want the phone to always be set to 50 megapixel images, or really any of these, then you can go here and toggle those. So I know for some people, they like when their phone goes back to the default, because if they make modifications, they don't always want that to stay. But if you do find that any of these are things that you always want to be there, you can certainly go to settings to keep to make that adjustment. But this concludes my video on camera tips and tricks for the Samsung Galaxy A17 5G. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new today, but this is Kevin here. Thanks for watching, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care and have a great rest of your day.